What a year it has been. Fighting in Ukraine, the overturning of Roe v. Wade, the continuing COVID crisis. But of course, the biggest story on this show was the battle to save American democracy. Ahead of the midterms, the issue was front and center thanks to a series of blockbuster hearings by the January 6th committee. Yes, that was this year. In August, an NBC News survey found that registered voters considered threats to democracy the #1 issue facing the country, ahead of so-called kitchen table issues. Still, things looked bleak when Committee Vice Chair Liz Cheney lost her congressional primary to a Trump-backed challenger. Had Trump sycophants become the only viable Republican candidates? The 2022 primaries overall were a boon for election deniers on the right. They ran for key statewide offices, including Secretary of State, across the country. More than 80% of primaries for Secretary of State featured an election denier. And of those who ran on a major party ticket, 50% advanced to the general election. In Arizona, Michigan and Alabama, election deniers won primaries for Secretary of State, for Attorney General, and for governor. 60% of Americans had deniers on their midterm ballots. Liz Cheney herself described how bad things could get if these conspiracy theorists were able to take power in November.
With every effort to excuse or justify the conduct of the former president, we chip away at the foundation of our republic. Indefensible conduct is defended. Inexcusable conduct is excused. Without accountability, it all becomes normal, and it will recur.
And even President Biden, despite so much quote-unquote conventional wisdom that he should focus his message on inflation and on gas prices, he let Americans know that democracy was at stake in these midterms.
MAGA forces are determined to take this country backwards. They promote authoritarian leaders, and they fan the flames of political violence that are a threat to our personal rights, to the pursuit of justice, to the rule of law, to the very soul of this country.
It seems like this message was received because voters were able to beat back a full red wave and averted many of the worst potential midterm outcomes. Democrats kept the Senate, and election deniers lost statewide races in 12 out of 13 races in key battleground states. Additionally, many of the most prominent Trump-endorsed candidates lost their races. But at the same time, Republicans did gain control of the House, and more than 170 election deniers won their federal or state-level midterm elections. This is clearly not a problem that is going to disappear anytime soon. In New York, Congressman Pat Ryan is an example of how to run on a pro-democracy platform and win. He went 2 for 2 this year, winning an August special election for his House seat, and he got elected again in the midterms. Ryan was able to pull off 2 close wins by focusing on abortion and voting rights. He told me so on this show.
We did not pull our punches. We did not poll test. We did not triangulate. We said freedom and choice are on the ballot. It is our duty as patriots, I believe, who believe in this country and our founding values, to stand up and continue to say that in the face of further escalation by the far right.
There will be further escalation. The election deniers, the conspiracy theorists, the authoritarians and fascists will be with us in 2023, sadly. And so we need a Democratic Party willing to keep up the fight for democracy. And that, as Congressman Pat Ryan puts it, a party that won't pull its punches. New York Democratic Congressman Pat Ryan joins me now. Congressman, thanks for coming back on the show. 2022 was the year Democrats did run on democracy. Do you think that's why your party was able to beat back the red wave and some of the most prominent Trump-backed candidates?
When we stood clearly, unequivocally, and said, this is existential. We love our country, we believe in our democracy, and there's a party that's increasingly throwing that out the window for their own power and political gain. And in races where we made clear what was at stake and made clear, as I certainly did twice, we were going to fight with every ounce of our being to defend our democracy, we won. And I think that we have to continue that, because as you said, this fight is not going away. And certainly my resolve is even stronger.
So you held on to the Senate, your party, but Democrats, of course, lost the House, where you sit narrowly. A new study suggests the 5 closest swing districts were only lost by around 7,000 votes total. Some people are saying that your state, New York, a traditionally blue state, should have done more to help deliver Dems to the House. Do you have regrets about the way New York Democrats, including DCCC Chair Sean Patrick Maloney, who lost his own race, one of the first DCCC chairs to lose a race in decades, do you have regrets about how the New York Democrats handled these midterm elections?
Well, certainly we were not hoping, I was not hoping to be the only Democrat in New York that won one of these toss-up seats. That we have to do better than that. Certainly, just like I did as an Army officer, after every mission, we need a fulsome after-action review. That's something I've called for and I'm excited to be a part of. The good news is the path to retaking the House will run right through New York. And the roadmap that we laid out, fighting for fundamental rights and delivering economic relief, those are the twin thrusts of the campaigns that we need to continue to run. And ultimately, we will be able to show, I think, here in the next 2 years, we are here, Democrats are here to deliver, to listen to what folks' needs are on both protecting freedom and the economic relief that they need, and then actually deliver results. And I call me old-fashioned, but I still believe that if you listen and then deliver, you earn voters' trust.
So let's keep talking about New York, because when we talk about democracy and existential threats, people might think of Florida or Texas. But what did you make of the New York Young Republicans Club hosting, just the other day, white supremacists and election deniers at a gala? Can you do bipartisan work? I hear a lot from Democrats. We're going to have to be bipartisan in the Senate and House going forward. Can you do bipartisan work with Republicans who not just tolerate, but dine with Holocaust deniers and conspiracy theorists and white supremacists?
This is an existential threat to our democracy, and it happened right here in New York. As you said, it's happening in towns and cities across the country. Look, I took an oath when I graduated West Point to support and defend our Constitution from enemies, foreign and domestic. And when there are domestic threats to the sanctity of our Constitution and our democracy, we have to call them out. And we saw that here, where Marjorie Taylor Greene said that she literally thinks she could have led a more effective insurrection against the United States government. That is the definition of seditious, traitorous behavior. We have to call that out. To me, to your question, there are patriots who believe in our principles and our democracy. And I think there are some in the Republican Party. Those are folks, patriots are people that I can and will work with, but those who are in it for themselves and their power, we can give no quarter to them.
One quick last question, Congressman. What is your number one priority legislatively when the new Congress begins in January?
Well, one of the first bills I introduced is the Protecting Reproductive Freedom Act. In over 20 states right now, there are attempts to rip away access to medication abortion, or abortion medication, pardon me. This is happening across the country. We are already seeing the far right doubling down on this, trying to take away further reproductive rights and abortion rights. So this is legislation I already introduced in the House and want to continue to push forward to make sure that every American has access to this health care and has reproductive freedom, a fundamental American freedom that millions have risked their lives to protect throughout our country's history. We have to continue that fight.